Leviticus 11. Now that God's done killing a couple of dudes, it's time for a long list of rules about what you can and cannot eat. God's gonna basically kill off the biblical restaurant industry in one fell swoop because no one's gonna be able to keep track of what's okay to put in their mouths. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Say to the Israelites, of all the animals that live on land, these are the ones you may eat. You may eat any animal that has a divided hoof and that chews the cud." Let's just stop here because this is a weird path to go down. Here's what you can eat. I mean, unless this list is really short, which it's not, why not just tell everyone what they can't eat? Just say, no pork, no sheep, no cats, and then be done with it. And now, God's gonna play a weird little logic game with us. Because the rule says the animal has to have a divided hoof and chew cud. It doesn't say or, it says and. And God is about to take that very literally. There are some that only chew the cud, or only have a divided hoof, but you must not eat them. The camel, though it chews the cud, does not have a divided hoof. It is ceremonially unclean for you. The hyrax, though it chews the cud, does not have a divided hoof. It is unclean for you. The rabbit, though it chews the cud, does not have a divided hoof. It is unclean for you. And the pig, though it has a divided hoof, does not chew the cud. It is unclean for you. You must not eat their meat or touch their carcasses. They are unclean for you. The hyrax? What is this, a Dr. Seuss book? We get it. There is a 2-item checklist. It's all or nothing. Chew cud, divided hoof, nom nom nom. How many examples of mistakes do we need? And how come an animal that chews the cud but has a divided hoof is unclean? It's chewing cud. Cud is food an animal has eaten, digested, and then comes back up so they can eat it again. I would call that pretty damn unclean. The hoof being separated? No. God's logic makes no sense here. A pig is not unclean because of what its foot looks like. By the way, we are told the hyrax and the rabbit are off limits because they chew the cud but don't have divided hooves. Except those two animals don't technically chew cud. That would require more than one stomach, like a cow, which they don't have, so they cannot chew cud. I mean, they're disgusting for plenty of other reasons, like eating their own poop, but not for the reason the Bible says. Anyway, that passage also said pigs are on the no-no list, so if you like bacon, you must be an atheist. I'm pretty sure that's how this works. Fight me. Of all the creatures living in the water of the seas and the streams, you may eat any that have fins and scales. But all creatures in the seas or streams that do not have fins and scales, whether among all the swarming things or among all the other living creatures in the water, you are to regard as unclean. And since you are to regard them as unclean, you must not eat their meat. You must regard their carcasses as unclean. Anything living in the water that does not have fins and scales is to be regarded as unclean by you. Got it. Fins and scales are required. Can you imagine being a fisherman in these times? I caught something big. We're finally gonna eat. Aw, damn it. Not again. Anyway, moral of the story, God hates shrimp. Devout Christians should be protesting outside Long John Silver's and Red Lobster the same way the rest of us protest outside Chick-fil-A. These are the birds you are to regard as unclean and not eat because they are unclean. The eagle, the vulture, the black vulture, the red kite, any kind of black kite, any kind of raven, the horned owl, the screech owl, the gull, any kind of hawk, the little owl, the cormorant, the great owl, the white owl, the desert owl, the osprey, the stork, any kind of heron, the hoopoe, and the bat. The bat? This is a list of banned birds, and they threw bat on the list. Bats are mammals, not birds. What the hell, God? So, how did the authors make the mistake? Simple. They probably saw bats flying, assumed they were birds, and just lumped them together. Look, I can understand that mistake. This is thousands of years ago. I can let it slide. But let's not pretend the Bible is a science book. Got it, Matt Powell? I do appreciate that the Bible had to tell everyone not to eat vultures, owls, and eagles, as if they were regular menu items. And of course, don't eat the stork, because even back then they were all about abstinence-only sex education. All flying insects that walk on all fours are to be regarded as unclean by you. There are, however, some flying insects that walk on all fours that you may eat, those that have jointed legs for hopping on the ground. Of these, you may eat any kind of locust, katydid, cricket, or grasshopper. But all other flying insects that have 4 legs, you are to regard as unclean. Great. Who knew when God sent a plague of locusts, he was actually sending everyone dinner? Given that there are millions of species of insects, are we supposed to thank God for giving us a green light on 4 types? 'Cause that's just stingy. You will make yourselves unclean by these. Whoever touches their carcasses will be unclean till evening. Whoever picks up one of their carcasses must wash their clothes, and they will be unclean till evening. I know that sounds sensible, but what God is saying is if you touch a carcass, you're unclean and you need to wash your clothes. Except your clothes aren't necessarily contaminated with anything. It's like they think certain animals' uncleanliness will transfer over to you in some magical way. Which is weird. That also creates problems because, what if there are mosquitoes around? If you swat them, you're technically now touching a dead carcass, so you would need to clean yourself. But that makes it almost impossible to go outside at all. The solution would be to swat them all before they touch you, which is really hard to do. I'm just saying, I don't think God thought this through. Every animal that does not have a divided hoof or that does not chew the cud is unclean for you. Whoever touches the carcass of any of them will be unclean. Of all the animals that walk on all fours, those that walk on their paws are unclean for you. Whoever touches their carcasses will be unclean till evening. Anyone who picks up their carcasses must wash their clothes, and they will be unclean till evening. These animals are unclean for you. Look, I think we got the point. Just assume everything is unclean except for, the 8 things we can eat. Everything else requires a shower, followed by eternity in hell. But no, God's not done. He's still reading off his prohibited list. Of the animals that move along the ground, these are unclean for you. The weasel, the rat, any kind of great lizard, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the wall lizard, the skink, and the chameleon. Of all those that move along the ground, these are unclean for you. Whoever touches them when they are dead will be unclean till evening. When one of them dies and falls on something, that article, whatever its use, will be unclean, whether it is made of wood, cloth, hide, or sackcloth. Put it in water. It will be unclean till evening, and then it will be clean. If one of them falls into a clay pot, everything in it will be unclean, and you must break the pot. Any food you are allowed to eat that has come into contact with water from any such pot is unclean, and any liquid that is drunk from such a pot is unclean. Anything that one of their carcasses falls on becomes unclean. An oven or cooking pot must be broken up. They are unclean, and you are to regard them as unclean. A spring, however, or a cistern for collecting water remains clean, but anyone who touches one of these carcasses is unclean. If a carcass falls on any seeds that are to be planted, they remain clean, but if water has been put on the seed and a carcass falls on it, it is unclean for you. Biblical germ theory is wild. If something is unclean, anything in its vicinity becomes unclean and requires washing, if possible, or breaking, which is insane. If a dead carcass falls in a cooking pot, you can't just clean the cooking pot? You have to break it? Why? Why can't we just clean it? It's what we do with the normal food anyway, and that apparently works just fine. There is kind of an answer to that. If a carcass falls on cloth, you can wash it thoroughly. You can get in the pores and clean it. That's how the laundry machine works. But if the carcass falls in a pot, you can't really clean the crevices, just the surfaces. So you just gotta destroy the whole thing. I mean, there's a logic to it, but it still doesn't make sense. And given what these people were working with at the time, it honestly just seems like a major hassle. If an animal that you are allowed to eat dies, anyone who touches its carcass will be unclean till evening. Anyone who eats some of its carcass must wash their clothes, and they will be unclean till evening. Anyone who picks up the carcass must wash their clothes, and they will be unclean till evening. It is amazing to me that slaughtering a permitted animal is totally fine. It's fine to eat, it's fine to sacrifice at the altar, but if it just has a heart attack and dies on its own, then God has very specific rules in place because, ew, everything is disgusting now. Every creature that moves along the ground is to be regarded as unclean. It is not to be eaten. You are not to eat any creature that moves along the ground, whether it moves on its belly or walks on all fours or on many feet. It is unclean. Do not defile yourselves by any of these creatures. Do not make yourselves unclean by means of them or be made unclean by them. I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourselves and be holy, because I am holy. Do not make yourselves unclean by any creature that moves along the ground. I am the Lord who brought you up out of Egypt to be your God. Therefore, be holy, because I am holy. So we can't get revenge on the serpent from the Garden of Eden. Damn it! And look at God, so proud of himself. You have to be just like me because I'm holy and perfect. If I jumped off a cliff, you have to as well. These are the regulations concerning animals, birds, every living thing that moves about in the water, and every creature that moves along the ground. You must distinguish between the unclean and the clean, between living creatures that may be eaten and those that may not be eaten. Yeah, thanks God. At a time when food is scarce, God is making it extra hard for everyone to find dinner. Gotta make sure every ingredient passes the checklist. Times like these, I am glad I am vegetarian. It is so much less complicated, and it doesn't involve eating locusts.